Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are going on a wild ride. We're going to be looking at faith and science together, and our vehicle for this is going to be the Bombardier Beetle.
Yeah, a Bombardier Beetle. It's pretty interesting, actually, because our main source material is a sermon, believe it or not.
Oh, wow. Okay, so a sermon, and is it like a modern sermon? Or
Yeah, it's a recent sermon, and the question's tackling is, does God exist? And the way the speaker gets at that question is through this tiny little bug that's got a really interesting way of defending itself.
Okay, I'm intrigued already.
Okay.
We've got this sermon asking about God, but using this beetle to kind of make the case.
Right. It sort of makes us think about, like, how we approach these big questions about God. Like, can we actually see evidence for a creator when we look at nature? And the sermon is saying, yes, we can. It's saying that creation is actually like God's active witness. It's like he's constantly showing himself to us through the world around us if we just take the time to really look.
So this idea of God being active in creation, it's a key part of the sermon, right?
Definitely. And the sermon uses a really cool analogy to explore it. It compares our relationship with God to toy frogs. You know those toy frogs?
Oh yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
So the speaker talks about two types of toy frogs, one that's hand-cranked and one that's solar-powered. The hand-cranked one only jumps when you put in the effort to wind it up, but the solar-powered frog, it just keeps going effortlessly, fueled by the sun.
Okay, I see where this is going. So the solar-powered frog is kind of like how God's love works. It's always there. It's constantly available, like sunlight.
Exactly. You got it. And the sermon even pulls in a Bible verse to back this up, Romans 1:20. It says that God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, they've been clearly seen since the creation of the world. We understand them through what's been made. So basically it's saying the evidence for God is all around us. We just have to open our eyes and see it.
Okay, so we've got this idea of God actively revealing himself through creation. And now we're bringing in the Bombardier Beetle.
Yeah.
So how does this little bug fit into the picture?
Well, this is where things get really cool. So the speaker in the sermon seems to really like this beetle. He calls it the Headbutt Bombardier Beetle, which I think is an awesome name.
Headbutt Bombardier Beetle.
I like it, right? It's a great name. And before we even get into the specifics of how it defends itself, it's worth pointing out that there are over 370,000 species of beetles on Earth.
Wow, that many.
Yeah, crazy, right? And they're incredibly diverse and complex. It's mind-blowing. And the Bombardier Beetle, with its crazy defense mechanism, is a perfect example of that complexity.
Right, so let's set the scene. We've got this little beetle going about its day, and suddenly a predator shows up looking for a snack.
And what does our beetle do? It doesn't run, it doesn't hide, it fights back, it unleashes this boiling hot chemical spray at its attacker.
Whoa, seriously, boiling hot.
Oh yeah. And we actually found this awesome video that shows exactly how it works. So the beetle has these two separate chambers inside its body, one with hydrogen peroxide and the other with hydroquinone.
Okay, two separate chambers, got it.
And then there's this third chamber with special catalysts. When those two chemicals mix in this third chamber, bam, it triggers this super powerful reaction.
So it's like a built-in chemical weapon.
Pretty much. And it's an exothermic reaction, which means it releases a ton of heat. The temperature of this spray can reach almost 212 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the boiling point of water.
Ouch, that's gotta hurt.
Oh!
Talk about an effective defense.
And the beetle has this nozzle-like thing that it can aim with. It can actually direct the spray right at its attacker. And the video we found even captured the sound of these tiny explosions.
Oh wait, you can hear it.
Yeah, it's like a series of pops and crackles. Really wild. But here's the really amazing part. The beetle doesn't hurt itself when it does this. It has these safety features built in that prevent the chemicals from mixing before they're supposed to. And they make sure that the blast goes outward, not inward.
Wow. So it's like this perfectly engineered weapon system, super powerful, but totally safe for the beetle to use. It's incredible.
Right. And the sermon uses this as an example of God's design. This level of detail and precision, it points to something more than just random chance happening.
It's like seeing a blueprint and knowing there must have been a designer behind it.
Exactly. The Bombardier Beetle, with all its amazing abilities, it's like a testament to the intelligence behind creation.
So we're not just talking about cool science here. We're talking about what that science might reveal about the world and our place in it. And it sounds like there's a lot more to this story.
Oh yeah, definitely. After the break, we're going to dive even deeper into the spiritual lessons that the sermon draws from the Bombardier Beetle's incredible story. So stay tuned.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Now we're really getting into it. This sermon about the Bombardier Beetle and what it tells us about God's existence. We're talking about this crazy defense mechanism it has before the break.
It really is remarkable, isn't it? And the sermon doesn't just stop at the science. It actually goes a step further and connects it to some pretty profound spiritual concepts. Like the speaker uses the beetle's defense as a metaphor for God's justice and protection.
So it's like this little guy is equipped with exactly what it needs to survive in a world that's full of danger. We all face our own kinds of predators in life, right? Stuff that comes at us and makes us feel threatened.
Yeah, exactly. We all have our own challenges and setbacks. And the sermon is saying, look at this beetle. It doesn't give up. It stands strong and fights back with everything it has. And we can do the same.
It's a pretty powerful message of resilience, especially if you're feeling overwhelmed by things.
Absolutely. And the speaker really emphasizes that even when we feel small, even when we feel insignificant, we have a creator who has given us the strength we need to endure.
And he doesn't just leave it at that general idea of strength. He actually lays out some really specific ways to apply this beetle story to our own lives.
Yeah.
He gives us 4 prompts for reflection.
Right. So the first one is all about humility. He asks us to picture ourselves as small as that beetle, standing beneath this huge, vast creation. It's a call to really recognize our place in the grand scheme of things.
I like that. It's like zooming out and getting a fresh perspective. Sometimes we get so caught up in our own little worlds.
Exactly. And then from that place of humility, the sermon moves into gratitude. It asks us to think about those times when we felt God's presence in our lives, those moments of protection or guidance or just unexpected blessings.
Those moments where you're just like, wow, thank you. It's a good reminder that God isn't some distant, uninvolved being. He's actually active in our lives, even when we don't realize it.
Right. And then the third prompt kind of builds on that. It encourages us to recognize the strength that we've already been given, the strength to overcome challenges. It's not about pretending that everything's easy. It's about acknowledging that we're tougher than we sometimes give ourselves credit for.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Sometimes we forget about the tough stuff we've already been through and survived.
Exactly. And then the final prompt, it's all about purpose. The speaker uses the beetle's short lifespan to make a point about the significance of our own lives.
Okay, so even though the beetle doesn't live very long, it still have a role to play. It's still part of something bigger than itself.
Exactly. And that's true for us too. The sermon is saying that even a tiny creature like a beetle has a purpose. So imagine the potential and meaning that our lives hold.
It's a pretty awesome thought, actually. It's like we're all part of this giant story. Yeah. And every single one of us has a unique part to play.
And that purpose, it gives our lives meaning. It gives us direction. It connects us to something bigger than ourselves.
I love how this sermon weaves together science and personal reflection and biblical truth. It's really compelling.
It really is. And it encourages us to look beyond the surface, to really see the world with new eyes, to recognize God's fingerprints all over creation.
And the Bombardier Beetle, with its crazy spray and its incredible design, it becomes this symbol of God's artistry. It shows us that there's always more to discover, more to learn, more to appreciate about the world around us.
It's like an invitation to go on this journey of exploration and discovery.
And that journey of discovery can also be a journey of faith.
Absolutely. The sermon leaves us feeling a sense of wonder and possibility. It reminds us that God is speaking to us through creation, if we're willing to listen.
So how do we do that? How do we listen? How do we take these lessons from the Bombardier Beetle and apply them to our own lives? We'll explore that more after the break. Stay tuned.
And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into this sermon about the Bombardier Beetle and what it can teach us about faith and science. You know, one thing I really appreciated about this sermon was how it acknowledged that not everyone starts from the same place when it comes to faith.
Yeah, that's so important. It recognizes that some people might have doubts or questions, and that's totally okay. It doesn't try to force anyone to believe anything.
Right. It's like the speaker saying, hey, it's all right to wrestle with these big questions. In fact, that wrestling can actually be part of what strengthens your faith. Exactly. And for anyone listening who might be feeling skeptical, the sermon offers this gentle invitation. It's like, why not take some time to really observe nature? Look at the incredible designs and systems all around us. See if you can really believe that all this beauty and complexity just happened by chance.
I like that. It's not about shoving beliefs down anyone's throat. It's about encouraging people to be curious, to explore, to come to their own conclusions.
And for those who already believe in God, the sermon reminds us to not take our faith for granted. It's like, don't just check the box and move on. Cultivate that sense of awe and wonder. Keep exploring, keep learning, keep noticing God's handiwork in the world around you.
So it's not just about saying, I believe. It's about living that belief, letting it inform how you see the world.
Definitely. It's about recognizing that faith is a journey, not a destination.
Now, earlier we talked about those 4 prompts for reflection from the sermon: humility, gratitude, recognizing our strength, and living out our purpose. But how do we actually put those things into practice? They can feel kind of abstract.
I think it starts with paying attention, really being present in the moment, noticing the little things that we often miss, like the intricate pattern on a leaf, or the way a hummingbird hovers in midair, or how a tiny plant can push its way through a crack in the concrete.
It's like training ourselves to see the extraordinary in the ordinary.
Exactly. And when we start to notice those little things, it naturally creates a sense of humility.
Yeah.
We realize that we're just a small part of this vast, incredible universe.
And from that humility comes gratitude. You start to appreciate all the good things in your life, all the beauty that surrounds you.
And as you practice gratitude, you start to recognize your own strength. You remember the challenges you've already overcome, and that gives you the courage to face whatever comes next.
And all that leads us to our purpose.
Yeah.
It helps us figure out how we can use our unique gifts and talents to make a positive impact on the world.
Right. It's about finding that thing that lights you up, that thing that you're good at and that the world needs.
And it doesn't have to be some huge, grand gesture. It can be something small, something simple, something that brings you joy and makes a difference in the lives of others.
This whole conversation about the Bombardier Beetle, it's been a great reminder that even the smallest creatures can teach us profound things about life and faith.
It's amazing to think that this little bug, with its crazy defense mechanism, can point us to something so much bigger than itself.
It shows us that God is everywhere, if we're willing to look for him.
So to everyone listening, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep. We'll be back next time with another fascinating deep dive. Until then, thanks for joining us.